When I got on the lower level, went out through the narrow opening, left the unclosed end of that big steel rolling hangar door, the sound of another aircraft. I looked up, and here comes this airplane in a steep power dive, and I'm seeing what's looking like blinking or flashing lights on the front, hearing strange popping, buzzing, and whizzing sounds all about me, but I don't recognize any of them for what they were. Later, I was told that what I thought was blinking or flashing lights was actually machine gun muzzle flashes, and those popping, buzzing, and whizzing sounds that I was hearing were those machine gun bullets striking and ricocheting off the steel hangar door right behind me and off the concrete apron on which I was standing. But since I didn't recognize them for what they were, I didn't consider them any danger to me. My interest was drawn to a big old bomb hanging there in the bottom of the fuselage between the fixed landing gear on that old radial engine valve dive bomber. Suddenly that bomb released, it wobbled as it began to fall. That airplane began to pull out of its dive. By the time it had completed its dive and was in level flight, I don't think it was more than 100, 150 feet over my head. It's then that I first saw and recognized that big round red insignia there on the bottom of the wing. That and the fact that he has just dropped a bomb has convinced me that these are not the friendly fellows I thought they might be. I turned around, hurried back inside the hangar, hoping I could find someone with a key to the ammo shack. All of our guns and ammunition was locked up, and I wanted to get a gun and ammo and get at these guys, you know. But as I come in the front door of that hangar, the other few that I was on duty with that morning were heading out the back door. Somebody, I suppose the duty officer, spots me and says, "Hey, you, follow me." I went after them. I thought, oh boy, he's the duty officer. We're going to get some guns and ammo. We're going to do something about this, you know. But as they went out the back door of that hangar, instead of turning to the right and going down to the end of the A&R hangar, building 38, where the ammo shack was located, they turned to the left, went out there somewhere, jumped into an unfilled construction ditch. I followed and jumped in after them, you know. I hit the bottom of that ditch, got myself stabilized, looked up. I'm looking right at a guy there in his white uniform. The work uniform was blue bell-bottom dungaree trousers and a chambray work shirt. But he was in his dress white uniform, as though he was going into Honolulu, going to church or somewhere. Never did find out why he was in his dress uniform, but I'm so thankful that he was, because there on the left sleeve of that uniform was a petty officer's waiting badge. And I recognized that winged, round cannonball, the insignia of an aviation ordinance-man. I said, "You the duty ordinance-man? Yeah, you got a key for the ammo shack? Yeah, well, let's go get some guns and ammo and shoot these blankety blanks, you know." So I hadn't much more than hit the bottom of that ditch, and I and that ordinance-man were on our way up out of that ditch. Somebody, again I suppose the duty officer, shouts, "Get back in the ditch! Get back in the ditch!" I don't want to be in that ditch. We're military men. We should be putting up a defense. We shouldn't be here in this ditch. Besides, I know this is the beginning of that war that they've been talking about and we've been preparing for. And I'm from a proud family, and I damn well know that if I'm going to lose my life in this or any other battle of this war, I would want my family and my country to know that I died fighting, not hiding. We continued up out of that ditch, started to run for the ammo shack. Then I heard the most unexpected military command directed at myself and that ordinance-man I thought I would ever hear. Somebody, again the duty officer I suppose, shouts, "Get back in the ditch or I'll put you on report for disobeying a direct order." Hell's bells. These guys in these airplanes are machine gunning and dropping bombs, trying to kill as many of us as they could, and our own duty officer hiding here in the ditch is threatening us with military discipline for wanting to defend ourselves? I couldn't believe it. With total and complete disregard for the threat of military discipline, with total and complete disregard for the fact that aerial bombs and machine gun bullets were raining down in the area to where we were running, we continued to run. We made it to the ammo shack. The ordinance-man unlocked the door, let himself in. I'm right behind him. "What do you want?" "Give me a 50 caliber machine gun." Now, I'm a recent farm boy. The biggest gun I'm used to firing is a shoulder-fired 22 caliber rifle. This is not a shoulder-fired gun. This is a fixed mount machine gun. Hell, it looked to me like a cannon without wheels, you know. But I took it as best I could, most likely cradled it in my arms. I wasn't very big at the time. Turned and started out the door. By now, I guess a few other brave souls figured they hadn't ought to be in that ditch either, and they'd followed us to the ammo shack. The guy coming in the door was somewhat taller than I, huskier built. I just offloaded that machine gun to him. I said, "Here, take it to the PBY park and find a 20 Tranger. I'll get the ammo." He took it, looked a bit surprised, but he took it, turned around, and out the door he went. I turned around, and there again, I'm so thankful for that aviation ordinance-man, because without his cooperation, none of this that I was involved in could have happened. Well, anyway, when I turned around, he was just setting 2 canisters of 50 caliber ammo up on the counter. I grabbed those 2 canisters of ammunition, turned out the door I went. Now, I'm not a runner or sprinter, never have been, but I guarantee you, I beat the guy with a gun to the airplane. He had a heavier load than I did. We were approaching from the port side of that airplane, the same direction that the attacking aircraft were coming in from. But the ladder to get into that airplane was hanging from the starboard gun blister around the backside. I ran around the backside, set those canisters down, started up the ladder. I don't think I got more than a couple of rungs when it dawned on me, hey, if I get inside this airplane, am I going to be strong enough to reach down and pull that big old gun up inside? I don't think so. So I jumped down off the ladder. Just the guy with the gun got there. I said, "Give it to me, you get up inside, I'll hand it to you." Boy, he chopped up that ladder, jumped inside, turned around, reached down. I got the gun to him somehow, most likely muzzle first, which is the lightest end, but which is also a safety no-no. But I don't think either one of us were thinking about safety right at that time. I shouted, "Put it in a port blister. That's the side they're coming from." He turned around and disappeared into the fuselage of that airplane. I grabbed a canister of ammo in my right hand, guided myself up the ladder with the left hand, set that canister inside the airplane, back down, got the second canister, back up the ladder, set it inside, jumped inside, picked those 2 canisters up, turned, stepped across to the port gun blister just as he was swinging that mounted gun out and locking it in firing position. I set the canisters down under the gun, flipped the lid open, come up to the end of the belt, ready to load, thinking he'd have the breech open. But he was just standing there staring skyward. I looked up, and here comes another one of those guys in a steep power dive. Same old blinking and flashing lights. Now I'm only hearing popping sounds, which I was later told were some of those machine gun bullets passing through the fuselage of that airplane we're in. Big old bomb hanging there in the bottom. Man, I couldn't wait on this other guy to get his train of thoughts back together. I just reached over, slid the lock forward, threw the breech open, fed the end of the belt in the loading mechanism, slammed the breech shut, grabbed the charging pin, pulled it back, let it go. Bam! We got him around the chamber. Shoot! I shouted, and he pulled the trigger. Now, I guess he was one of those guys that thought with a machine gun, you don't have to aim. You just point it in a general direction, fire away. Because I stood there and watched those tracer bullets fly off harmlessly through empty space, nowhere near where that airplane was. I think that's when my country boy hunter instinct kicked into gear. I used to shoot jackrabbits on the run, Chinese ringneck pheasants on the fly. Nah, not with a shotgun, with a .22 caliber rifle. I knew you had to aim and put that bullet where the target would be when the 2 of them come together. I shouted, "Let me get the next one." He let that gun down, stepped aside. I grabbed it, brought it back up. Just as I did, here comes another one of those guys in a power dive. Blinking, flashing lights, big old bomb hanging there at the bottom. I got a bead and a lead. A bead and a lead. I continued to lead, and I squeezed that trigger. I continued firing all the while that airplane came down, completed its dive, pulled out into level flight, and passed just overhead. I watched those tracer bullets fly through the air. It looked like every one of them went right into that round opening in the front of that old air-cooled radial engine Bell dive bomber, then stitch to stitch right down the bottom of the fuselage. Now, some of you guys know and remember that following each one of those tracer bullets, there are 4 regular bullets, another tracer, 4 more regular bullets. So I know here and I know here that I did some damage to that aircraft. But you're not going to be watching him to see what happened with him, because he's going away. He's no longer a threat. You better be looking for the next one that's coming at you. I bring that gun back down, and I'm looking for another one in the power dive. I don't see any power dive there. There's one out over the channel, maybe 2 city blocks away, well within the range of a 50 caliber machine gun. He's not in the power dive, but in a steep banking and descending left turn, as though he's getting ready to make another machine gun run on it. Because he's in that banking turn, I can see the cockpit. It's about 6 or 8 feet behind the front of that airplane. And I figure at that distance and at that speed, if I use the front of that airplane as my aiming point, I'm going to get some rounds into the fuselage and into the, maybe even into the cockpit. And believe you me, if you can get a couple of these bouncing around inside that cockpit with that pilot, you're going to give him something else to think about besides coming back and machine gunning you a second time. I maintained that lead, squeezed the trigger. Brrr. I don't think I got off more than about 6 or 8 rounds. But I saw 2 of those tracer bullets disappear into the fuselage of that airplane just forward of the cockpit. And when they did, that airplane did an abrupt rolling right turn and was gone from my field of fire. No more aircraft came back to bomb or to strafe our end of the island that morning. I stayed at that gun. I got to fire short blasts at other aircraft as they passed through my limited field of fire on their way to or from other targets. About halfway through that raid, the second wave of that attacking aircraft came in, and about the same time the USS Nevada came down the channel, making a run for open water. Boy, those pilots, those airplanes got on it like a swarm of bees. They were hoping they could sink it there in the harbor, and that would have blocked the harbor for some time. I got to fire short blasts at some of them as they too passed through my limited field of fire on their way to or from the USS Nevada. But by now, our own aircraft parked on the ramps and on the apron, and adjacent hangar, Building 6, Hangar 1, which were between where I was and where the Nevada headed there at Hospital Point, were beginning to burn so fiercely and putting up such heavy clouds of black smoke that it just obliterated that field of fire. 50 years later, I was listening to a radio broadcast from Pearl Harbor. That year, they had went and located as many of those pilots that had participated in that raid as they could find, who had survived the war, were still physically able to travel, and they had brought them back to Pearl Harbor for that event. They were interviewing them. They asked this one pilot, "What part did you play in that raid?" Now listen carefully to this. He said, "I was the lead pilot of a group of 9 aircraft. Our assigned targets were the airplanes and the hangars on Ford Island." That's where I was. He said, when I went in for my first run, machine gun, dropped my bomb, I didn't see a soul. It was like the whole island was asleep. But he said, we were surprised how fast they reacted, because by the time I had came around and was lining up for my second machine gun run, there was so much fire coming up that I turned and went elsewhere. Oh, I would have loved to have talked to him. There's the guy that dropped the very first bomb to fall at Pearl Harbor that morning. That's the guy that dropped the bomb that got to me, spilt of my blood, most likely the very first blood to fall at Pearl Harbor that morning. But in spite of that, I think I'm the guy that got to him with that on-target 50 caliber machine gun fire and changed his mind about coming back and machine gunning us a second time.